Hey Fly Tyers, welcome back. My name is Matt. Thank you for stopping by the channel. Now, a friend of the channel recently asked me if I ever tie any of my own patterns. Yeah, of course I have. I'm a fly tyer. I experiment with a lot of things. Sometimes you tie out of necessity. Sometimes you tie it just for having fun. But there is one fly that has done pretty well for me, and I'm going to tie that one for you tonight. And normally I like to give a history of the flies I tie, but this fly doesn't have a whole lot of history because I created it in 2019. But I will tell you a little bit of the backstory. I was out at my farm in Western Maryland one day in November of 2019. Now it's Saturday night, I've finished all my tractoring, I don't have any farm work to do on Sunday morning, so I'm going to get to go fishing. And I start looking in my bag and my vest, and I don't have a streamer box. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I've got a bench, I've got a little bit of materials, I got a vise there at the farm, I'll tie up some streamers. So I sat down Saturday night, tied up half a dozen streamers, all different, some crazy concoctions. But it's enough to get me fishing. So I'm going out to Town Creek on Sunday morning. Now Town Creek is one of the delayed harvest streams in Western Maryland. There's a little bit of reproduction that goes on there, but mostly it's a delayed harvest, most of the year a put and take stream. So this Sunday morning, I'm throwing some streamers. I'm throwing them through some deep water, through some riffles, all over the place. And I can't remember, I know I didn't have any hookups for the first hour or so. I might have missed a strike or two, but when I tied on this fly, the one I'm calling the Squirrel Badger, it looks pretty good. I say, okay, this one might work. I start throwing it through some of the deeper pools, and boom, within 1 hour, I had 6 fish. 6 fish, 2 of them were at least 14 inches within 1 hour, all on this one streamer. It held up well, it was working great for me. Now here's the kicker, I hook up with a big one. So this guy was at least 20 plus inches. He immediately takes all my line hand out. I've got him on the reel for about 2 seconds. I probably don't have my drag set right, and he breaks me off. I lose the only streamer that had been working for me. It's in some brown trout's mouth in Western Maryland. So when I get back to the farm, I immediately sketch it out so I don't forget this one. When I get back home, I tie up a half a dozen of them. I changed it around a little bit. I've changed the green tail from, to a yellow. I think I made some pink ones. And for all practical purposes, I couldn't tell a difference how it fished with the different color tail. But what I think really set this off is the badger. The badger feather on the top. It's an Indian saddle feather. It's got that dark brown lateral stripe in it. So I really think this is what made the fly successful. So I like the fly. I've tied many of them since. I've always got it in my box. It's almost become one of my confidence flies, for a streamer. I think you're gonna like it. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. So there it is in the vise, my green Squirrel Badger. Now let's get started. I'm tying this on a size 6. This is a 2X long streamer hook. It's got the point coming in, the inward bend, I guess. And I'm going to use black UTC. This is a 210 denier. So it's thicker than what we tie on small flies. Now after you've got a base all the way back to the start of the bend, take your green squirrel. Now I like to take some of the side ones. See that right there? They're a bit longer and they get you that green, then black, then green again. And squirrel hair stacks really well. So put it in your stacker, give it a few good whacks on the table. And there we go. Now it's also a pretty long tail. Probably, it's a long streamer hook, so it's not as long as a hook shank, but I'd say a little bit longer than the gap of the hook. So let's get this caught in right here. With just a couple of medium wraps right there. Check your length, I like that. Now let's go ahead and then put a tighter wrap. Now, don't snip this off. We're going to leave that as part of the underbody. Probably snip it off right back up here where we're going to do the eye. So you can reach in here and probably about right there. Okay. Now just wrap this in, and it's going to spin around on you a little bit, but the goal here is just to keep this as an even body going all the way up. Okay, that body looks pretty flat, and if you notice, squirrel hair is, or squirrel tail anyway, does wind and stay a little flatter, doesn't flare out on you like deer or elk would. So next component is a rib. Now I'm using green. You could use anything dark, I think, that would contrast against this silver body we're going to have on it. But this is a UTC in size medium. So I'm going to lay it in, keep it parallel on my side of the hook, just keep the body level, and wind it all the way back. Now a couple of tight wraps on the back, and back your thread up just a little bit. Let's give us some room for the Mylar tinsel. This is a size 14. I'm going to tie it in with the silver side down so that when I wrap it, we do see the silver. So I'm just going to catch it in toward the back. Not too much material, just enough to get it caught in right there. Now, try to keep your thread flat so you don't mess up your body. If you need to spin this UTC, go ahead. And open wraps to get your thread back up here to where we're going to end the wire or tinsel body. So just take your time with this, overlapping wraps. Each wrap, the first one you might have to go completely so you can hide that black back there, but every other wrap just slightly overlapping the previous one and take it all the way up front. Okay, let's catch it off up front before we snip this tinsel. Now those wraps aren't perfect. You see a little bit of black in between a couple of them, but that's all right. We can hide most of that with our rib that's coming up next. Let's go ahead and snip your tinsel off. Now let's wrap the rib. And I like to take one full wrap on the back before I start going up. So that's my full wrap right there. Now evenly spaced wraps, fairly tight to just really lock this tinsel in. Now take it all the way back up front. Okay, let's catch this off with a couple of tight wraps up here. I'm not sure if I mentioned, but I was counter wrapping this wire to really lock that tinsel in. So go ahead and spin this wire off. Now if you have a little sharp point right there, you might want to take a couple of loose wraps to try and bury that. So our next component is the white marabou. The white marabou on the throat. So I'm just taking one tuft here, and I will grab a fair sized piece of it right there and then just kind of break off some on the end. And that, take a look at it. Is that going to be enough? I think it is. So go in here and snip it off that feather so you don't have a whole lot of extra fluff getting in your way. Flip it over in my vise. Try to judge the correct length put a couple wraps on it before I really secure. I think that is about the length I want. So I will lock that in with a tight wrap or two right here, and then snip off this fluff right here. Okay, now for the wing on this guy, just Indian rooster. This is a saddle piece, badger color. And if you can find a couple of feathers that have that dark lateral line in it, this is really what I think makes this fly successful. So take a couple of them, line up your tips, and pull off, strip enough off of the stem. That's about the length I want. So I'm going to need to pull just a few more off right here on top and the bottom. Make sure my tips are still pretty well aligned. And if you need to, pull a couple extra off the bottom just to help it lay flatter. Okay, I think that's about the length I want right there. So I will, let's see, put a couple of loose wraps, 2 or 3 loose wraps, and then make sure I've got my position where I want it before I really lock them in. If these spin to the side on you, you'll never get them standing upright again. So take a look at it. I think those are coming off the top pretty well right there. Got 3 loose wraps. Now I'm going to go ahead and just put a couple of tighter wraps. Letting that stem bend around that curve. If I snipped it off way up there, I would end up with a step on my head. It probably wouldn't make the fly fish any differently, but it's easier to get a clean head and a prettier head if you don't have a big step coming down off of it. So I think we can live with this right here. That head is not too bulky. So let's go ahead and whip finish this. A 3 or 4 turn should suffice. Snip this big thick 210 denier thread off and take your resin, UV resin or your varnish, whatever you use for head cement. Quick little spin here. Oh, okay, if I'm going to critique this fly before we're done, that tail is pointing a little bit down, so I probably should have put a thread wrap underneath it before I started wrapping that body. But there you go, folks, the green squirrel badger. Pretty fun pattern to tie. It's been very successful for me, so I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.